The only real hope and change you'll ever get is from God. It's going to come from the Lord, or it's not going to come at all. It's going to come when you admit that you can't do it and that you've got to have His help.
God bless you. Let's start. We are in study, as we always do. It is best to always study earnestly and diligently. And we're wondering on the words that Jesus said in the book of Luke. And Jesus said it will be as it was in the days of Lot. Now Lot was in Sodom and Gomorrah. In Sodom and Gomorrah specifically. Well, what was it like? Well, we know a little from what is spoken in our Bibles, where it speaks specifically on the angels that come to gather Lot and his family. Abraham pleading to whittle it down to even 10 righteous people, and that it won't be destroyed if there was but 10 in an entire city. Not even 10 could be found. And as you know, when the two angels that appeared to the town, remember they are his men, and they go and Lot takes them to his home, and it says that everyone of the city wants to specifically come and have relations with these two men, the whole city. Imagine where you live and absolutely everyone, everywhere that you know, and all the ones you don't know in the entire district of the area you live in. We're not talking like 10 people, 100 people, a couple of thousand. We're talking about an entire city, if you think about that. So, with that in mind, considering that, from what Jesus spoke, I've got the book of Yasha here, and it actually details in chapters 18 and 19, Sodom and Gomorrah. The things they did in that city, the wickedness that they were about, who they were. And Jesus said in Luke 17, as the days of Lot. Well, if it's going to be as the days of Lot, what were they? And we want to know how close we are right now to the days of Lot. How similar are we right now to the days of Lot? So let's find out and have a look what happened in those days by reading Book of Yasha. I hope you have a strong stomach, because when you see just how wicked all the people were and their customs of wickedness and deceit were, and that was the standard, that was the normal, that was the flagship of this people. To be wicked was how you knew you were in Sodom and Gomorrah. So we shall begin in chapter 18. And Abraham rose and did all that God had ordered him. And he took the men of his household and those bought with his money, and he circumcised them as the Lord had commanded. And there was not one left whom he did not circumcise. And Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised in the flesh of their foreskin. 13 years old was Ishmael when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And in the third day Abraham went out of his tent and sat at the door to enjoy the heat of the sun during the pain of his flesh. And the Lord appeared to him in the plain of Mamre, and sent 3 of his ministering angels to visit him. And he was sitting at the door of the tent, and he lifted his eyes and saw, and lo, 3 men were coming from a distance, and he rose up and ran to meet them, and he bowed down to them, and brought them into his house. And he said to them, If now I have found favor in your sight, turn in and eat a morsel of bread. And he pressed them, and they turned in, and he gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he placed them under a tree at the door of the tent. And Abraham ran and took a calf, tender and good, and he hastened to kill it, and gave it to his servant Eliezer to dress. And Abraham came to Sarah into the tent, and he said to her, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it and make cakes to cover the pot containing the meat. And she did so. And Abraham hastened and brought before them butter and milk, beef and mutton, and gave it before them to eat, before the flesh of the calf was sufficiently done. And they did eat. And when they had done eating, one of them said to him, I will return to thee according to the time of life, and Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And the men afterward departed and went their ways to the places to which were sent. So you're getting an understanding of the context of where we are in the time of Abraham right now. This is where the circumcision took place. At this point, and the angels that have come to minister. Because now, from verse 11, it goes into what's going to be happening in Sodom and Gomorrah, what this place is like, and why they are sent. So now, verse 11, we continue from here. In those days, all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, and of the whole 5 cities, were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord, and they provoked the Lord with their abominations, and they strengthened in aging abominably and scornfully before the Lord, and their wickedness and crimes were in those days great before the Lord. So these are people that provoke God with their abominations, and they strengthen in wickedness as they get older, because they behave abominably and scornfully. So this is people with hatred in them, because to be scornful against someone that's to have absolute bitterness against, and their wickedness and crimes. So now you get to understand the crimes they commit, to understand what this city is and who these people are and what they're all about. And Lot was living in the midst of all these things we're going to be reading. So here we are. And they had in their land a very extensive valley, about half a day's walk, and in it there were fountains of water, and a great deal of herbage surrounding the water. And all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah went there 4 times in the year with their wives and children, and all belonging to them. And they rejoiced there with timbrels and dances. So there's a rather large area of water and of herbage, so it's a nice lush area, and everyone goes there 4 times a year. So this is something that occurs. So if we were to count it upon where we are now, you'd say once every 3 months, I suppose. Not that I'm saying this is once every 3 months, but you get the idea of how regular this would be. And now let's see what they do at this place. And in the time of rejoicing, they would all rise. So everyone does this, not 1 or 2. They would all rise and lay hold of their neighbors' wives, and some the virgin daughters of their neighbors, and they enjoyed them. And each man saw his wife and daughter in the hands of his neighbor, and did not say a word. And they did so from morning to night. And they afterward returned home, each man to his house, and each woman to her tent. So they always did 4 times in the year. So 4 times a year, every year, they go to this place to rejoice, and then they go and take their neighbors' wives or the neighbors' daughters, even the virgins, sir. This is what they do, and no one complains, no one argues. This is some sort of orgy. Now, what was a part of the laws when Moses came about not going after your neighbor's wife? You start to get a bit of an understanding of things. This is just immorality for the sake of immorality, and this is how they're just having fun 4 times a year. And now, as it continues on, also when a stranger came into their cities and brought goods which he had purchased with a view to dispose of there, the people of these cities would assemble, men, women, and children, young and old, and go to the man and take his goods by force, giving a little to each man until there was an end to all the goods of the owner, which he had brought into the land. So when the person comes into their land to sell goods, they rise up, male, female, young and old, all, and they take what he has by force. So they're robbing him. Each person takes something that this person has till they have nothing. And as it continues, and if the owner of the goods quarreled with them, saying, "What is this work which you have done to me?" then they would approach to him one by one. So each person that's robbed him will now come up to him one by one after they've purposely robbed him, and this is their behavior. And each would show him the little which he took and taunt him. So they show him what they stole from him, and they make fun of him for it. They taunt him with it. It's like, "This is what I took from you." And as it continues, saying, I only took that little which thou didst give me. And when he heard this from them all, because they all did it to him, and they're like, oh, I only took this little bit. That's all it was, just a little bit. But everyone took just a little bit, forcefully. And they're trying to say, oh, you gave it to me. Well, they forcefully took it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Exactly. Whole army of people will come to attack you. What can you do on your lonesome? And they're trying to say, oh, you gave it to me. And they're like, I only took a little bit. But they took everything he had till he has nothing. So he would arise and go from them in sorrow and bitterness of soul, when they would all arise and go after him. So now not only have they taken everything, they now go after him after they've taunted him, acting all innocent, and they drive him out of the city with great noise and tumult. So there's one person has all these people making noise after him, driving him out of the city after he's gone there to sell wares, and they've all robbed him. It's a city of thieves. It's a place you don't want to end up in. As it continues on, and there was a man from the country of Elam who was leisurely going on the road, seated upon his ass, which carried a fine mantle of diverse colours, and the mantle was bound with a cord upon the ass. And the man was on his journey, passing through the street of Sodom, when the sun set in the evening, and he remained there in order to abide during the day. So he decided to stay there because he's had such a chill journey, and it's now dark, so that he wouldn't be traveling in dark. So as it continues on, but no one would let him into his house. And at that time there was in Sodom a wicked and mischievous man, one skillful to do evil, and his name was Hadad. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveller in the street of the city. And he came to him and said, Whence comest thou, and whither dost thou go? And the man said to him, I am travelling from Hebron to Elam, where I belong. And as I passed the sun set, and no one would suffer me to enter his house, though I had bread and water, and also straw and provender for my ass, and am short of nothing. And Hadad answered and said to him, All that thou shalt want shall be supplied by me, but in the street thou shalt not abide all night. And Hadad brought him to his house, and he took off the mantle from the ass with the cord, and brought them to his house, and he gave the ass straw and provender, whilst the traveller ate and drank in Hadad's house, and he abode there at night. So Hadad's seen this bloke that no one is saying he can stay in their place for the night, even though he had provision. He just needed a roof. And he goes, well, you can stay with me, don't worry. And this man has this mantle that's made of fine colours. And he's like, oh, come mine, I'll feed you, it'll all be good, don't you worry. So now the next morning comes as it continues on. And in the morning the traveller rose up early to continue his journey, when Hadad said to him, Wait, comfort thy heart with a morsel of bread and then go. And the man did so, and he remained with him, and they both ate and drank together during the day. When the man rose up to go, and Hadad said to him, Behold, now the day is declining. Thou hadst better remain all night, that thy heart may be comforted. And he pressed him, so that he tarried there all night. And on the second day he arose up early to go away, when Hadad pressed him, saying, Comfort thy heart with a morsel of bread and then go. And he remained and ate with him, also the second day. And then the man rose up to continue his journey. And Hadad said to him, Behold, now the day is declining. Remain with me to comfort thy heart, and in the morning rise up and go thy way. And the man would not remain. So each day the man's gone to leave, Hadad's like, hey, come hang out, we'll eat, we'll drink, and then we'll do it next day. Let's do that first. So each day he's holding this guy back from leaving. But now as it continues, and the man would not remain, but rose and saddled his ass. And whilst he was saddling his ass, the wife of Hadad said to her husband, Behold, this man has remained with us for 2 days, eating and drinking, and he has given us nothing. And now shall he go away from us without giving anything? And Hadad said to her, Be silent. And the man saddled his ass to go, and he asked Hadad to give him the cord and mantle to tie it upon the ass. And Hadad said to him, What sayest thou? And he said to him, that thou, my lord, shalt give me the cord and the mantle made with diverse colours, which thou didst conceal with thee in thy house to take care of it. Now remember, this man was travelling with this fancy bit of mantle, and Hadad had taken and untied the cord and removed this from the ass himself. And as Hadad answers, it continues on. And Hadad answered the man, saying, This is the interpretation of thy dream. The cord which thou didst see means that thy life will be lengthened out like a cord. And having seen the mantle coloured with all sorts of colours means that thou shalt have a vineyard in which thou wilt plant trees of all fruits. And the traveller answered, saying, Not so, my lord, for I was awake when I gave thee the cord, and also a mantle woven with different colours, which thou didst take off the ass to put them by for me. And Hadad answered and said, Surely I have told thee the interpretation of thy dream, and it is a good dream, and this is the interpretation thereof. So he's going, No, you're asking me about a dream. I don't know anything about no mantle. We on about a mantle. I think you're asking me about a dream, so I'm giving you the interpretation of your dream. While he's knowingly taken that mantle. This is the deception. This man's a deceiver. And as it continues on, now the sons of men give me 4 pieces of silver, which is my charge for interpreting dreams. And of thee only I will acquire 3 pieces of silver. So not only has he robbed the man of his mantle, he's now saying, Oh, I interpret dreams, and this is the interpretation of the dream that you're talking about, but I'll only ask you for 3 pieces of silver. But of course this ain't nothing to do with no dream. He's literally just robbed him of his item, and now he's trying to get money off him as well. As it continues on, and the man was provoked at the words of Hadad, and he cried bitterly, and he brought Hadad to Sadak, judge of Sodom. And the man laid his cause before Sadak, the judge. When Hadad replied, saying, It is not so, but thus the matter stands. And the judge said to the traveller, This man Hadad telleth thee truth, for he is famed in the cities for the accurate interpretations of dreams. And the man cried at the word of the judge, and he said, Not so, my lord, for it was in the day that I gave him the cord and mantle which was upon the ass, in order to put them by in his house. And they both disputed before the judge, the one saying thus the matter was, and the other declaring otherwise. So Hadad saying it's all about a dream, and he's going, Nah, he's literally robbed me and taken an item from me. And the judge is saying, Oh no, he's a dream interpreter and he's famous for it around here. It's the custom. Can't trust judges these days. So you start to get an idea of what's going on here. And Hadad said to the man, Give me 4 pieces of silver that I charge for my interpretations of dreams. I will not make any allowance, and give me the expense of the 4 meals that thou didst eat in my house. And the man said to Hadad, Truly I will pay thee for what I ate in thy house. Only give me the cord and mantle which thou didst conceal in thy house. So he's hidden it in the house. And he knows he's hidden it there, and he wants it back. And he goes, I'll pay you for the food. I don't mind paying for that because you did feed me. That's the truth of it. But he wants his mantle back, and this other bloke's just trying to get as much out of him as he can, because these are deceivers, these are thieves, these are greedy, covetous. That's why he stole the mantle in the first place. And Hadad replied before the judge and said to the man, Did I not tell thee the interpretation of thy dream? The cord means that thy day shall be prolonged like a cord, and the mantle that thou wilt have a vineyard in which thou wilt plant all kinds of fruit trees. This is the proper interpretation of thy dream. Now give me the 4 pieces of silver that I require as a compensation, for I will make thee no allowance. And the man cried at the words of Hadad, and they both quarreled before the judge, and the judge gave order to his servants, who drove them rashly from the house. And they went away quarreling from the judge. When the people of Sodom heard them, and they gathered about them, and they exclaimed against the stranger, and they drove him rashly from the city. And the man continued his journey upon his ass with bitterness of soul, lamenting and weeping. And whilst he was going along, he wept at what had happened to him in the corrupt city of Sodom. So the judge is on the side of the villain, Hadad. The people of the city are in cahoots with these things, and they drive the stranger out, accusing him You know a tree by its fruits, a man his deeds. There's far more in this city than this. And the city of Sodom had 4 judges to 4 cities, and these were their names: Serach in the city of Sodom, Shakar in Gomorrah, Zabnak in Admah, and Menon in Zeboim. And Eleazar, Abraham's servant, applied to them different names, and he converted Serach to Shakra, Shakar to Shakrura, Zebnak to Kezobim, and Menon to Matzlodin. And by desire of their 4 judges, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah had beds erected in the streets of the cities. So the judges wanted these beds erected in the cities, and you're going to get to understand what these beds are for. And if a man came to these places, they laid hold of him and brought him to one of their beds, and by force made him to lie in them. I think you understand what that means by force. Remember, they wanted to lay with the angels. Literally, the judges desired, so they wanted beds put up outside, so when people came to the city, they could take them to these beds to force them upon them. Do you understand? And as he lay down, 3 men would stand at his head and 3 at his feet, and measure him by the length of the bed. And if the man was less than the bed, these 6 men would stretch him at each end. When he cried out to them, they would not answer him. So you got 6 people pulling this person over each end. And if he was longer than the bed, they would draw together the 2 sides of the bed at each end until the man had reached the gates of death. 3 people on one end, 3 people on the other, both pulling 2 different directions. What's it say? Reaching the gates of death. And if he continued to cry out to them, they would answer him, saying, "Thus shall it be done to a man that cometh into our land." So if a man comes into their land, they got these beds just waiting for him special. So there's some wickedness here. This is what it is to enter this city. This is who they are. This is their culture. This is the way they live. This is a place of just wickedness and immorality. And there's more. And when men heard all these things that the people of the cities of Sodom did, they refrained from coming there. So the reputation of this place, people stopped visiting there after this, because no one wants to be a part of any of that, because there's no good there. There's no morality there. There's no justice there. There's no truth there. These are wicked, hateful, greedy, judgmental, bitter. These are people of all wickedness of every manner and kind you can imagine. Think about storytime hour in the libraries today, and the sort of people that want to be teaching. Barry's dressed as Belinda. You understand. Children like candy stores. Barry's dressed like Belinda's like schools for infants. I think you understand what we're talking about. And when men heard all these things that the people of the cities of Sodom did, they refrained from coming there. And when a poor man came to their land, they would give him silver and gold, and cause a proclamation in the whole city not to give him a morsel of bread to eat. And if the stranger should remain there some days and die from hunger, not having been able to obtain a morsel of bread, then at his death all the people of the city would come and take their silver and gold which they had given him. So they would give him, this poor person that would come into their city, all this silver and gold, but they won't give him any food to eat. What's the point of silver and gold if you can't get any food? You're just going to starve to death. And that was what it was about. They'd starve them to death. This was their fun. This was their idea of entertainment. Today's day and age is a big screen and people watch whatever they like to watch upon it. In this day and age, they'd watch the people suffer. Now hang on, you can watch people suffer on today's big screens. It's the day and age we live in, it's normalization thereof. That's why they're starting to do this whole thing called the Squid Games and try and make reality of it now. We're in a dangerous era. You're starting to see parallels. We are moving into the normalization of this. This hasn't been accepted yet, but we're moving towards it, do you understand? Jesus gave the warning it will be as it was. Each year the birth pangs get worse. There's no sugarcoating. So all the people would come and take their silver and gold which they had given them. And this tells you that it's all the people of the city do this. It's not like certain people, all is the word. And those that could recognize the silver or gold which they had given him took it back. So after they'd given him the silver and gold they couldn't use, those that gave him that, they'd go back to collect what they'd given back. And at his death, they also stripped him of his garments. So now they're taking his clothes. They want the corpse's clothes. It's not enough for them. And they would fight about them. And he that prevailed over his neighbor took them. So they'd literally fight with each other over what was on this dead corpse. And they would fight over his things. And might, the strongest one, would prevail over the other and take what they wanted. There's no morality here, there's no justice, there's no nothing here. These are just, I wouldn't even know what to say besides just pure evil. There's more, it gets more, so be prepared. They would after that carry him and bury him under some of the shrubs in the deserts. So they did all the days to any that came to them and died in their land. And in the course of time, Sarah sent Eleazar to Sodom to see Lot and inquire after his welfare. And Eleazar went to Sodom, and he met a man of Sodom fighting with a stranger. The man of Sodom stripped the poor man of all his clothes and went away. So a stranger's in the city of Sodom. Eleazar's on his way there to visit Lot, and he sees some poor stranger having all his clothes stripped off him by a man from the city of Sodom. So this is where we are right now, and as we continue on. And this poor man cried, and he cried to Eleazar and supplicated his favor on account of what the man of Sodom had done to him. And he said to him, "Why dost thou act thus to the poor man who came to thy land?" And the man of Sodom answered Eleazar, saying, "Is this man thy brother? Or have the people of Sodom made thee a judge this day, that thou speakest about this man?" So he's like, "Who's this man to you? And who are you to judge?" is what he's saying, for what he's just gone and done to this person. And Eleazar strove with the man of Sodom on account of the poor man. So he's standing up for this poor guy who's just got robbed. So as it continues on, and when Eleazar approached to recover the poor man's clothes from the man of Sodom, he hastened and with a stone smote Eleazar in the forehead. So he's hit him in the head with a stone, and the blood flowed copiously from Eleazar's head. So he's hit him really well, because it says lots of blood is flowing from his head. And when the man saw the blood, he caught hold of Eleazar, saying, "Give me my hire for having rid thee of this bad blood that was in thy forehead, for such is the custom and the law in our land." So he's thrown a stone, hit him in the head with it, and he's bleeding out his head, and he says, "Pay me for smashing you in the head with a stone to get that blood out your head, because it's our custom that you pay me when I smash your head in with a stone." This is who these people are. And Eleazar said to him, "Thou hast wounded me and required me to pay thee thy hire?" And Eleazar would not hearken to the words of the man of Sodom. And the man laid hold of Eleazar and brought him to Shachra, the judge of Sodom, for judgment. And the man spoke to the judge, saying, "I beseech thee, my lord, thus has this man done, for I smote him with a stone, that the blood flowed from his forehead, and he's unwilling to give me my hire." So he's like literally in front of the judge, "Yeah, I hit him in the head with the stone to get the bad blood out of him, and he's refusing to pay me for it." This is where we are in Sodom and Gomorrah. What does the judge have to say on this one? Would you like to find out? And the judge said to Eleazar, "This man speaketh truth to thee. Give him his hire, for this is the custom in our land." So the judge said, "Yep, this is what we do. So pay him. Give him for hitting you in the head with that stone." This is what he's literally told Eleazar. So what does Eleazar do? Let's carry on then. And Eleazar heard the words of the judge, and he lifted up a stone and smote the judge. And the stone struck on his forehead, and the blood flowed copiously from the forehead of the judge. So he's thrown a stone at the judge's head, smashed his head in, because he's now bleeding copiously, which means he's bleeding a lot from his head. And Eleazar said, "If this then is the custom in your land, give thou unto this man what I should have given him. For this has been thy decision, thou didst decree it." So he's just said, "This is our custom, you pay for this." So Eleazar's gone and smashed the judge, and he's basically just said to him, you pay him instead of paying me, because if I owe him and you owe me, you can pay him for what I owe him, after I've smashed your head in because you just decreed this law. Yeah, this is the place. Oh, there's more, it gets worse. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you understand now? If I could find but 10 righteous people, you start to understand why there wasn't even 10. There was no good in this place. Yet Lot suffered this place for long enough. And Eleazar left the man of Sodom with the judge, and he went away. And when the kings of Elam had made war with the kings of Sodom, the kings of Elam captured all the property of Sodom, and they took Lot captive with his property. And when it was told to Abraham, he went and made war with the kings of Elam, and he recovered from their lands all the property of Lot, as well as the property of Sodom. So this is when Abraham goes out, which you'll find in your Bible in the book of Genesis. I think we're between chapters 16 and 19 in the Bible from memory's sake. For this particular section, I can't remember exactly where, but I know it's between there. So this is when Lot's been taken and Abraham goes with his small group. So this is the section where Melchizedek will appear, king of Salem, priest king, the bread and the wine. So this is back at that point. That's where we are in the Bible at this point here, what I'm now reading. So you get an idea of context of time period. And as we continue through, at that time the wife of Lot bare him a daughter, and he called her name Paltith, saying, because God hath delivered him and his whole household from the kings of Elam. And Paltith, daughter of Lot, grew up, and one of the men of Sodom took her for a wife. So Lot is back home. He's had a child with his wife. Her name is Paltith, and she's been taken as wife by one of the people of Sodom. And as it continues on, and a poor man came into the city to seek a maintenance, and he remained in the city some days, and all the people of Sodom caused a proclamation of their custom not to give this man a morsel of bread to eat until he dropped dead upon the earth, and they did so. As you saw earlier about what they do with the poor, so this man, none of them are going to feed him. They're waiting for him to die, and this is as it carries on, so be prepared. You may not appreciate this section, so I've given you fair warning before I continue. And Paltith, the daughter of Lot, saw this man lying in the streets, starved with hunger, and no one would give him anything to keep him alive, and he was just upon the point of death, and her soul was filled with pity on account of the man. So she cared and felt bad for this poor man who's about to die, because he's being starved by the city. And what does she do? And she fed him secretly with bread for many days. And the soul of this man was revived. For when she went forth to fetch water, she would put the bread in the water pitcher. And when she came to the place where the poor man was, she took the bread from the pitcher and gave it him to eat. So she did many days, and all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah wondered how this man could bear starvation for so many days. And they said to each other, this can only be that he eats and drinks, for no man can bear starvation for so many days or live as this man has, without even his countenance changing. And 3 men concealed themselves in a place where the poor man was stationed. So they're hiding to watch the poor man, to know who it was that brought him bread to eat. And Paltith, daughter of Lot, went forth that day to fetch water, and she put bread into a pitcher of water. And she went to draw water by the poor man's place. And she took out the bread from the pitcher and gave it to the poor man, and he ate it. And the 3 men saw what Paltith did to the poor man. And they said to her, it is thou then who hast supported him, and therefore has he not starved, nor changed in appearance, nor died like the rest. This is their way of doing things. So like the rest, like everyone else they do this to, why is not this one? We don't know how many years they've been doing this and how many people they've done this to, but this is so normal to them. When one don't die, they're like, something's wrong here. You get the idea. So as it continues, and the 3 men went out of the place in which they were concealed, and they seized Paltith and the bread which was in the poor man's hand. And they took Paltith and brought her before their judges. And they said to them, thus did she do, and it is she who supplied the poor man with bread. Therefore did he not die all this time. Now therefore declare to us the punishment due to this woman for having transgressed our law. So they've gone to the judges of their land to pass punishment upon her for her good deed of feeding this poor man while they were waiting for him to die on purpose, because this place is so wicked and their judges so corrupt. And as it continues, and the people of Sodom and Gomorrah assembled and kindled a fire in the street of the city, and they took the woman and cast her into the fire, and she was burned to ashes. And in the city of Admah there was a woman to whom they did the like. So because she fed this man, they made a fire and they threw her in it, and they burned her to ashes. That's what you get for doing kindness in Sodom and Gomorrah. For a traveler came into the city of Admah to abide there all night, with the intention of going home in the morning. And he sat opposite the door of the house of the young woman's father to remain there as the sun had set. When he had reached that place, and the young woman saw him sitting by the door of the house, and he asked her for a drink of water. And she said to him, who art thou? And he said to her, I was this day going on the road and reached here when the sun set. So I will abide here all night, and in the morning I will arise early and continue my journey. And the young woman went into the house and fetched the man bread and water to eat and drink. And this affair became known to the people of Admah, and they assembled and brought the young woman before the judges, that they should judge her for this act. So now this woman, who's had a random man sit outside her house and she's given him food and water while he stayed outside her door, she's now going to be judged for giving him food and water. Let's see what happens, shall we? And the judge said, the judgment of death must pass upon this woman, because she transgressed our law. And this therefore is the decision concerning her. And the people of those cities assembled and brought out the young woman and anointed her with honey from head to foot, as the judge had decreed. And they placed her before a swarm of bees, which were then in their hives, and the bees flew upon her and stung her, that her whole body was swelled. I don't know if any of you have actually been stung by a bee. I have, and I know exactly how painful just one sting is. And this woman was covered head to toe in honey and put in front of a hive just so her whole body could be stung on purpose. That's absolute agony. And I would hate to imagine how swollen she would have looked from them stings, because I know exactly how swollen just one sting does to me. It doesn't look pretty, and I don't look pretty anyway. And the young woman cried out on account of the bees, but no one took notice of her or pitied her, and her cries ascended to heaven. So they don't even have any emotions or feelings towards people crying in pain or suffering. They just don't care. These are demons. These are like the most wicked, evilest, coldest people. When you think when the Bible says the heart is desperately wicked, who can know it? This is a heart given unto absolute darkness. Who would ever want to know the like? And we're told, as it was in the days of Lot, so shall it be in the end. Are we quite here yet? Or are we on the way? Because we're seeing injustice in today's time. Did you see what happened with that young girl, underage? 9 people fresh off the boat forced themselves upon a child. This went to court. First was a group of 5. Then another group of 4 found her after the 5 have had their way. And the other 4 that found her, a different group, thought, well, it's our turn next. And then they did the same. This went to law. You know what the judge said? These people are displaced people. They're just trying to find a way to express themselves because of how they feel. They were not punished for their sin or their crime. I do not know what happened to the child after this, but this was the report. When this nation announced that it was going to be bringing in over 25 boat from the places you know. Remember, there's a reason it says in the Bible, God destroys the remnant of the Philistines of all their wickedness and evil. There's a reason Egypt and Saudi Arabia forbid them from entering their territories, because they know what they're capable of and they won't allow them in their land to do what they naturally do. not that dissimilar to this. And those that have truly dug, there are things you can never unsee. And you'll see things far worse than what I'm reading to you, by those that call themselves the citizens of that place that's being caused to a desolation, while the rest of the world is holding up flags for them. They don't know, but those that see it, you'll never unsee it. There's a lot of wickedness in this world, and God's judgment shall be done. As is written, so shall it be. And you pray they come to mercy and repentance, because there's only one place for them. Because the cries of the innocent, just as you see here, they ascend to heaven, and there will be punishment for the wicked. And this is the world we're coming into, as it continues to grow worse and worse. Don't be surprised, but be prepared, because we haven't finished yet. And the Lord was provoked at this and at all the works of the cities of Sodom, for they had abundance of food and had tranquility amongst them. So this was a place that wasn't like poor. They had everything they needed. There was abundance here. This was a place that was peaceful and still would not sustain the poor and the needy. What did God have in the laws when Moses came? To take care of the poor and the needy. You start to understand where all this came from. He did not want the world to be as Sodom and Gomorrah. He had to set his people apart from becoming like this. Those without God start to become like this. Because if you've seen how the great nation has started to fall as they have removed God more and more, and become more and more debased, more and more corrupt, more and more wicked, more and more perverse. And they're trying to bring it to the whole world. This is the problem we're in. There's a lot coming. And if you know the book of Esdras, it tells you about the great violence that comes from the east upon the west. Understand what comes. And how powerful and great the east becomes, that all the nations of the world are afraid and terror of them. We've seen nothing yet. Things must happen as is written, exactly as is written. Unlike those that lean upon their own understanding, you are supposed to seek God to set your path straight. That is the problem. This place is wicked, and there is judgment upon it, as we see here as it continues. And in those days their evil doings and sins became great before the Lord. Revelation, where it talks about Mystery Babylon. Mystery Babylon is not so much of a mystery when you know your history. Do you understand? And what happens when it is destroyed and its smoke runs up? Be prepared. And the Lord sent for 2 of the angels that had come to Abraham's house. So do you remember when we began in 18 and there'd just been the circumcision, and you'd had the angels that had come? So this is coming back from there. So this is the 2 that had come. So 2 of those that had gone there at that point are the same ones that are coming for this part here. So we have some context. So that had come to Abraham's house to destroy Sodom and its cities. And the angels rose up from the door of Abraham's tent after they had eaten and drunk, and they reached Sodom in the evening. And Lot was then sitting in the gate of Sodom. And when he saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed down to the ground. And he pressed them greatly. So he's like, come. You know, it's like, seriously, come with me. You don't want to be in this city. I know this city. You don't want to be here. Come. This is why it says he pressed them greatly. It's like, seriously, you know, that kind of intensity where you're really trying to put across a point. So it says, and he pressed them greatly and brought them into his house, and he gave them victuals which they ate, and they abode all night in his house. And the angels said to Lot, arise, go forth from this place, thou and all belonging to thee, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of this city, for the Lord will destroy this place. So we're at that section now where back in Genesis, where the whole city rises up and they want to lay with the 2 angels that come to his door. Back when Lot has to stand out the front and say, no, you can't do this. And they're like, you're a stranger, we're allowed to live in our land. And they're like, we're going to do worse to you than we were going to do to them. And we've just been reading the depravity they do, just to get an understanding. Remember them 2 beds where they pull them apart? You get the idea. And they're saying they're going to do worse to him than they would have done to them. And that's their natural custom, is that bed system of theirs for the new people. This is depravity to another level. So you understand how evil and wicked they are. Remember, it says everyone rises up. So that means the young and the old, the little boy and the old man. Everyone rose up for this moment in Genesis. And the angels laid hold upon the hand of Lot, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hands of his children, and all belonging to him. And they brought him forth and sent him without the cities. And they said to Lot, Escape for thy life. And he fled, and all belonging to him. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah and upon all these cities brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. All I can think is the day when the great stone will be hurled upon the earth. The sun will be dark, and the moon not give its light, and the stars of heaven will be shaken upon the earth. This consistency through Old and New Testament. And in regards to that, there will be a time where a great stone will be thrown, the great millstone. And he overthrew these cities, all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. And Adu, the wife of Lot, looked back to see the destruction of the cities, for her compassion was moved on account of her daughters, who remained in Sodom, for they did not go with her. So Lot's wife looked back. Now, you know in Genesis it said, do not look back. Now you get an understanding of why she looked back. She had daughters that did not leave. And we know what just happened to this city. That's why she looked back. And when she looked back, she became a pillar of salt. And the oxen which stood in that place daily licked up the salt to the extremities of their feet. And in the morning it would spring forth afresh. And they again licked it up unto this day. So they can't waste away the salt that's there, even though the oxen go to lick up the salt where this be. Now, you know, normally if this was just one random pillar, it would just wear away if they kept doing this. This says it keeps coming back afresh. That's why it's still there. Imagine all those years gone by. Think about how many thousand generations years have gone by so far. And where we think of that, God had that salt grow afresh every time. And Lot and 2 of his daughters that remained with him fled and escaped to the cave of Adullam, and they remained there some time. And Abraham rose up early in the morning to see what had been done to the cities of Sodom. And he looked and beheld the smoke of the cities going up like the smoke of a furnace. So he went to look. Daughters that did not go. We do not know all the history of Adu, the wife. But we know this much. Daughters would have had husbands, and if the husbands don't leave and don't want to leave, the wives stay with them. By that choice, we reap what we sow. Our blood upon our own head. That place was destroyed. And Lot and his 2 daughters remained in the cave. Now you know what happens with Lot and his 2 daughters. And they made their father drink wine, and they lay with him, for they said there was no man upon the earth that could raise up seed from them. So as far as they know, they've literally just watched what they thought was the whole world being destroyed, and them and their dad just got saved from the world being destroyed, as far as they could tell. Because as it continues on, for they thought that the whole earth was destroyed. And they both lay with their father, and they conceived and bare sons. And the firstborn called the name of her son Moab, saying, From my father did I conceive him. He is the father of the Moabites unto this day. You know who the Moabites are. You know the history of the Moabites with the Israelites, but today's study is not on that. And what happens next? And the younger also called her son Benami. He is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. And you know the history of the Ammonites. People do what they think is right. And remember, it's when Moses comes that God sets the law to make things like this don't happen no more. And after this, Lot and his 2 daughters went away from there. And he dwelt on the other side of the Jordan with his 2 daughters and their sons. And the sons of Lot grew up, and they went and took wives from the land of Canaan, and they begat children, and they were fruitful and multiplied. So not long after this, they figured out they weren't the only people on the earth. This is a sad history, I'm not gonna lie to you. I can't imagine how terrified they would have been, but they thought they were the only people on the planet. Now, in desperation to carry on, they do what they think is the right thing to do, but look what line they create. The Moabites and the Ammonites. You can look them up in Old Testament. I mean, look at Abraham and Sarai's like, oh, God said you'd have a child. Take my servant Hagar, and she will produce a child. Of course, they have Ishmael. And you know the blessing upon Ishmael, with his hand is against everyone around him. Things we do create history. And you know the argument of today's time. That's right, where you have the sons of Ishmael versus the sons of Isaac. Do you understand? How bad is today's time compared to what we just read? Do you think it could get worse, considering what we just read? Do you think it has to compare a lot more closely to what we've just read, compared to how it currently is? I think it's going to be more in line with this as more things start to change. Remember last year in February? Was it last year, February 2023, or was it 2022? Or it might have been 2022. The beauty law that they passed in Spain, where a person, if he were to kill a rat in his home, would be fined 50,000 euros. But if he wished to have relations with that said rat, as long as he did not harm it, that is acceptable. People and animals, the beauty law in Spain. Don't know what to tell you. Or where the UN said they wanted to remove the laws against young and old. You understand? This is the day and age we live in. This will only continue. It's the birth pangs. It grows more and more. We have to stay in Christ. Pity the lost and try and draw them to repentance. But if they do not heed the warning of the watchman, their blood be upon their own head. Because wide is the path to destruction, and many choose it. Narrow is the way, and few find it. But those that do it does lead to eternal life. And that's why there's work that must be done. And keep praying, and keep seeking your Father in heaven. Because he sent his Son for each and every one of you to save you. He didn't send him to condemn you. He sent him to save you. So don't be too shy to call on him. Now I hope you learned something from this study today. And may God bless and guide each and every one of you and keep you strong and courageous and bold for Christ. God bless you all.
Also in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers. It takes the grace of God to change us, folks. How can you be saved if you're not willing to repent? And the Lord Jesus Christ said, except ye repent, ye shall all likewise perish.